So it's day 4 today, and it's almost halfway through the conference here at the AIDS Conference 2026 in Brazil, Rio de Janeiro. And data keeps coming out, and unfortunately for Zimbabwe, it appears in 2027, Zimbabwe is likely to record an estimated 72,000 new infections of HIV due to the absence of PEPFAR funding. Today, during a media workshop, Mike Reid, a former PEPFAR executive, said the absence of an MOU between Zimbabwe and the State Department actually makes things worse, because as it stands, there's no alternative and there's no way to navigate the envisaged catastrophe in as far as new infections are concerned in our home country.
In Zimbabwe, which was the Zimbabwean government's preference, I understand, the lack of an MOU poses a real epidemic threat. A substantial amount of resources in Southern Africa, where the lion's share of the epidemic still is, will not be supported by US government. And so the analysis that you're referring to is a poster here showing that in the next year in Zimbabwe, they anticipate 75,000 additional new infections because of cuts in programs as PEPFAR transitions out of Zimbabwe. Look, I think it's a travesty. I wish we could avoid it. There is certainly opportunities for innovation, and my hope is that funders like the Gates Foundation might work with the Zimbabwean government, not necessarily to provide services, but to quickly innovate with the Zimbabwean government to think about how can you deliver services more efficiently, more effectively, with far less resources. But I don't want to paper over the fact that the substantial amount of resources that the US provided are now going to be gone. And I don't think there's any avoiding the fact that there will be bad outcomes for people living with HIV as a consequence in Zimbabwe.
Other African countries are currently engaged in negotiations with the US government, while others, such as Zimbabwe, have rejected the deal outright. Zambia is still negotiating. Meanwhile, South Africa has recently had its US funding cut.
In this case, we haven't formally been informed as to why. We have not been approached with any proposed new arrangements. Well, indications are that we are not going to be approached. Any proposal for new agreement. We do interact. There was supposed to be our minister and the new ambassador was supposed to have a meeting which was cancelled. So, and from what we just pick up from interacting with some of the officials, we do interact at various levels. In my case, I also sit on the board of the Global Fund representing East and Southern Africa. So, and the US is a permanent seat. So we talk.
And what many governments have tried to do is how do we make sure that we do not lose completely all the gains that we had when we had good funding, sustainable funding from the donor community, especially from the USG for years. And we have tried to adjust. We have tried to reduce some of the services which were being provided. And as Florence indicated, the first thing at government level, and I'm sure the Honorable Minister will also highlight that, is the first thing that suffers is the community support direct from government. It's very difficult for government to suddenly shift funds from other programs to go into support community services. And when you don't invest in community services, I think again the first thing which will suffer is HIV infections. So you start seeing some pockets of new HIV infections arising because you're not following up people in the community, you're not testing them up, you're not linking those that become positive again to look at the contacts they may have.
Reporting for HealthTimes TV, I'm Michael Gwarisa.